What's going on, guys? It is Caleb, and today I'm going to bring you guys another JavaScript coding tutorial. Today we are going to do the third project using some for loops. The project's going to search your text for your name. Pretty cool project. If you're not already over at Codecademy.com, make sure to go ahead and hit that up. And let's go ahead and get started by starting our project. So, with further ado, let's get started. Also, if you're not already in full screen, make sure to go in full screen so you can see this beautiful text. So what you'll be building. In this project, you'll be writing a short program that checks a block of text for your name. Specifically, it checks the text for the first letter of your name, then pushes, in other words, it adds that name to our array using the .push method. And it's just pushing something to an array is just another way to add something to the end of the array, and we'll go into further detail about that later. But it pushes or adds the number of characters equal to your name's length to an array. By inspecting the array, you'll be able to see if your name was mentioned. So once you've got the hang of loops, arrays, and if statements, we'll talk about ways this project could be improved. So the instructions are, some of this code will be new to you, but don't worry, we'll be going through it step by step. Are you ready? Click Save and Submit to continue and begin. So, we go ahead and take a quick little look here. We just have a couple variables, empty array, a couple nested for loops, and a couple if statements with some console.log. So, it looks pretty simple and looks kind of complex at the same time, but it is really simple if we just take it step by step. And we are going to do that. So let's go ahead and submit, get the green light, and go on to the next one. So if we go ahead and reset our code here, first we'll start by declaring the variables. We'll be using text, my name, and hits. Since text could be quite long, try putting backslashes at the end of each line to make your string wrap to the next line of the editor. That way, you avoid really long lines. Feel free to peek back at the first exercise for an example. You can just ignore the adjacent comment line, which is the first line right here on line number 1 for now. For all that does, it tells the console to stop worrying about the use of backslashes so we can wrap our lines of text. So, in other words, with this being set to true, we can now use backslashes while we're trying to type out really long lines. And what this will do, this will make it a lot easier for us to see, and we won't have to like word wrap the whole page. So it's really good. So what it wants us to do is declare the set and following 3 variables. Text, and make it a string containing some text. Place your name in there a couple of times. So if we were to go ahead and create a var and name it text, make sure to have it lowercase, and we want to make it named to some kind of a string, and let's just say blah blah blah, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to paste it back in here. Now I'm going to use the backslash, hit enter. What I'm going to do now, actually that's the wrong backslash, that should be a little that way. I'm going to paste it back in here, blah blah blah, and then I'll say Caleb. And let's see, there we go. Alright, so now really we could have put that all in one line. It really doesn't matter. I'll just put it all in one line if you want me to. But you can see how we can make multiple lines by using the little slash. So we have our text here, blah blah blah, and then my name. And that's essentially what you want to do for the text. Now for my name, make it a string containing just your name. So var my name equals, and I'm just going to say Caleb. Now hits and make it an empty array. So now we have to make a new array. So var hits equals box, and that will declare an empty array. And we go ahead and save and submit. We'll get the green light, and that's all good and dandy. So let's go ahead and go to the next exercise. Sorry if you can hear me smacking my gum. A little bit annoying. So if we go ahead and reset our code here. Oh, what happened? Okay, I think we're on the number 3rd. So yeah, it should be looking like this. So your first for loop. Awesome. Now let's write our outer for loop. The instructions are, before your below your existing code, create a for loop that starts at 0 and continues until it reaches the end of text and increments by 1 each time. This means it will check each character in the string. There's no need to write anything between the curly braces of your loop just yet. So check the hint if you need help. So to write a simple for loop that will go through all of this is fairly easy. All we have to do is use the dot length on my text, and then we'll just add 1 each time. So if we just go ahead and just say for, and we could say something like var a equals 0, because we want to start off at the very first slot within our text, and the very first place in our text is 0. Remember that they start by zeros and not 1. So the B in our text is 0 and it's not 1. So just a little side note. So var a equals 1. A is less than text dot length. And what this will do, it will call the length method on our text, and it will give us back however long this string of text may be. Now that we have its length, we can now tell A to add 1 each time as we loop through or increment, and this will count from 0 all the way up to the very last letter or character in our text. So if we go ahead and submit this code, we'll get the green light, so that's really good. So let's go ahead and start the next lesson. And once again, let's just go ahead and just reset this. Now, your if statement. Nice work. Now let's move on to the if statement. We'll want to place the if statement inside our for loop to make sure the program checks the if statement each time it moves forward through the loop. Essentially, the for loop is saying, hey, go through every letter in the text, and then if you see a statement if, I read that so wrong. Rewind. Okay, so the for loop is saying, hey program, go through every letter in the text. The if statement will say, if you see something interesting, push the text into an array. You can treat a string like an array of characters. For instance, you know that var myArray equals hello and then world. My array index 0 equals hello, and so forth. But this also works on strings. Var my name equals Eric, my name 0 equals E, because we are using the bracket notation to index the very, really we're taking the 0 number right here, the 0th position, which is the E here in Eric. So the instructions are, add your if statement in the body of your for loop. It should check to see whether the current letter is equal to or the first letter of your name. Capitalization counts. There's no need to put anything between the curly braces of your if statement just yet. So, all we have to do now is to set up our if statement, is say if text, and then we're going to throw in our incrementer, so if text, and then we're going to do the little substring right here, and we're going to say A, and then we're going to equal it out to the very first letter of our name, which is C, and what this will say, hey, if the very first character, or whatever character that you are on, equals a capital C, then it has to begin with my name. It has to be my name. So, with that being said, let's just go ahead and try and run this and see what we get. And we get the green light, so that's all good. Let's go ahead and start the next lesson. And let's go ahead and reset our code here. Alright, so your second for loop. Okay, last loopy step, add another for loop, this time inside the body of your if statement between the if's curly braces. So we want to add our for loop right here nested within our if statement. This loop will make sure each character of your name gets pushed into the final array. The if statement says, if we find the first letter of the name, start the second for loop. This loop says, I'm going to add the characters to the array until I hit the length of the user's name. So if your name is 11 letters long, your loop should add 11 characters to hit if it ever sees the first letter of my name in text. So for the second for loop, keep the following in mind. First, you'll want to set your second for loop's iterator to start at the first one, so it picks up where the one left off. If your first loop starts with for var I equals 0 rest of the loop, your second loop should be something like for var j equals I rest of the loop. Second, think hard about when your loop should stop. Check the hint if you get stuck. And finally, in the body of your loop, you have a program and use the dot push method of hits. Just like strings and arrays have a dot length method, arrays have a dot push method that adds the thing between the parentheses to the end of the array. For example, new array equals an empty array. New array dot push hello, which is a string, will push hello into the very first slot of the empty array, and it just adds it to the very end of the array. So if you were to have 99 things already in that array and you were to push hello into the array, the hello will now be located at the 100 spot instead of the 0 spot. As you can see here, if we index the very first slot of array after we pushed it with nothing in it, we're going to get hello in return. So the instructions are, okay, go ahead and add the second for loop inside the body of your if statement. So hopefully you kept up along with me, and I know that's a lot of reading, and I know I rambled on a lot, but let's just go ahead and start to write this. So first things first, we want to go ahead and nest our for loop. So for, and I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm going to go ahead and just say b. And I'm just doing this because a and b go good together, they sound good. So var b equals a. And we're setting this to a because this is going to continue right where a left off. So if we were, say, 30 characters down into blah 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 in our text, say we were right here in our text, we wouldn't want to restart our second for loop at the very beginning, back down here at this blah. We wanted it to start down here at this blah. And that's how we get it to start right there, by assigning b to equal to a. So in other words, we're referencing wherever this first saw our c. So if we were to see c at the very end, right here, we're going to say, hey, instead of going to the 0th place right here like we normally would, we're going to say go right here to the, let's just say, for example, this was the 50th character. Say we want this to go to the 50th space, and that's where you'll find the c, and then we'll use the dot length and push, and we'll add it all to our array. So we want to make sure to assign our first variable to whatever we called our first for loops iterator. As in this case, we called it a, so var b equals a. Now what we want to do, we want to say b is less than my name dot length plus b, or plus a. And what this will do is b is less than, and we want to put this in parentheses because we're going to do some addition, and we're going to say my name dot length, because we're going to get the length of our name. Then we're going to add a to it, or not equal, add, there we go. Now what this will do, let me just space this out so you guys can see it. This will say, okay, so whatever my name dot length is, which is just 1, 2, 3, 4, it's just like 5 characters long, what we're going to do now is add a to that. So whatever index place that we are at now, we're going to add that to it, and what this will do, you'll see in a second, we'll use it to push into our array later on. So if we were to go ahead and increment b by 1 each time, so when we loop and hit open curly brace, now what we want to type between our curly braces for our for loop is hits dot push, because we're pushing it into the hits array. And what we're going to push into the array is our text and then our B. And we're pushing this into our array, so whenever we find the whenever we find our first initial, so when we find the first letter of our name, C, we're going to assign that spot to B. And then B is going to get the length of our name, and then it's going to say, okay, well, we want to run until we added every single character, or every single character in our name to our array. And that's what it's essentially doing right here. And so now what we're going to do is go ahead and try and run this and see if we pass. And sweet, we did. So as you can see, we got 5 back in the terminal up here, which we haven't printed anything out, so it's probably just returning our dot length method. So let's go ahead and run and go to the next exercise. So now if we go ahead and reset our code, we should be right here. Now I'm only resetting my code because I've already written through all these, but log it. Perfect. You've now got the engine of your search program running. It will loop through the array, compare each letter to the first letter of your name, and if it sees that letter, it will then push the letter and all the letters that follow it to an array, stopping when the number of letters it pushes are equal to the number of letters in your name. Now, the instructions are, under your existing code and outside of all your loops, set up an if-else statement. If you don't have any hits, log your name wasn't found to the console. Otherwise, log the hits array to the console. Okay, so we want to make sure we're outside of all of our for loops and come down right down here. So I'm on line 13. You may be a little bit further, maybe a little bit less behind, but it's alright. So we're going to say if hits dot length, and we're going to equal it to 0, because if it equals to 0, this is how we're going to know that we have no hits, in other words, because if we have an empty array, we have nothing in that array, so therefore we did not get any hits within our text. So console.log, your name wasn't found. So your name wasn't found, exclamation mark. Now what we're going to say, we're going to go else, and we're just going to console.log, or kipson, here we go, console.log, and we're going to log out our hits. And what this will do, if we just say hits, it's going to print out our whole array. So whatever is within our array, it's going to print out. So let's go ahead and try and run this and see what we get. And as you can see, we got C-A-L-E-B, and they're all individual letters, and they're all individual slots and different slots in the array. So we got this exercise correct. Let's go ahead and go on to the next lesson. Victory! You've done it. Nice work. Now, as we mentioned, this system isn't perfect. For instance, if the paragraph contains both Eric and Eddie, we'll see this in our hits array. Eric and Eddie. Think about how you might fine-tune this program to make sure it only finds exact matches for your name. Search the internet to see if there are any built-in JavaScript string methods that can help. Instructions. In the meantime, click Save and Submit Code to finish this course and move on to the JavaScript goodness. So, we got this course down, packed, and locked. Now, it's not the prettiest thing. It's not the most complex thing. It's fairly simple and basic, but it gets the job done in the long run. And yes, there are errors. As you can see, if we were to have Eric and Eddie, it's going to print out Eddie into our array, which, that's fine. You can always fine-tune it, like it said, and there are plenty, and I mean plenty, of string methods that will help us along the way. So if you want, go ahead and feel free to even fine-tune this up even more to your liking, but just note all you have to do is save and submit to pass this little project. But guys, if you liked this video and it helped you guys out a lot, I know some of you guys were requesting this video, and sorry it took so long to upload. I've been extremely busy here in the past week, and I'm probably going to be a lot more busy now that in the course exams and finals and all this other great goodness is coming up. But long story short, guys, don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, and comment if you ever get stuck. And until next time, guys, it's been Caleb. Have a nice night.